So I'm a big fan of using app and website blockers, both for my phone and for my laptop. Now, again, I think a lot of the time when you hear app blocker stuff, the immediate thought is, okay, it doesn't work. Now, I'm going to say that, look, app and website blockers, they're not foolproof, right? They're not, immediate, but they definitely help. And the reason I say this is, for example, whatever bad habit you have at the moment, or thing that I guess you're perhaps trying to do less, if you think about it, there is a certain amount of requirements for you to go and do that thing, right? Perhaps it's you need to log on to a certain site or, type in a few things on your keyboard or open like a few things on your phone within a few clicks of a button you've got there. And what I find is that it's far more difficult. Like if something is very difficult to do, I'm far less drawn to do it unless I've got a genuinely good reason. For example, right, if perhaps you watch a lot of, I don't know, whatever content, Instagram, YouTube on your phone, and perhaps you're trying to cut down, then again, you can just say to yourself, right, I'm just going to cut down. But if you're entirely relying on that, then okay, maybe that's not ideal. Perhaps actually you want to stop watching content in the morning. Perhaps you just want to say, look, in the morning, I want to protect my mornings, or at least for me, I know that I've got things like YouTube and other things of content blocked entirely in the morning, right? Because I know for me, I want to protect my mornings. I know my mornings is when I can, best execute and, do meaningful work and get more difficult things done. So I know that I shouldn't be and don't want to be spending time on that at least in the morning. And so look, I can sit there and with willpower and say, right, I'm not going to do it. But again, I found it so much easier that if I can manually put in roadblocks that make things more difficult for me to do and put more roadblocks, I'm more likely to not do that said thing. So, for example, right, I've got a few blockers, like I said, but again, it's like, right, well, if I'm trying to get rid of it, now there's so much more that I need to do in order to get that thing, and so I'm more likely to go, right, well, let's forget it and let's just do the thing we were supposed to be doing anyway. Now, in terms of the blockers that I've got a blocker called Cold Turkey on my laptop, and that's quite good. And then I think on my phone, I've got something which is literally called App Blocker. And both of those are really quite good. And I think, again, this is just something which I just want you to consider. You don't need to, go and like, I don't need to necessarily convince you with this, but it's something to really consider because I think just having things that are almost locked away is quite useful. And I don't see it as something that restricts me. I try and look at the blockers as something that protects my time and energy. I think that's the most important thing. Because again, right, every single day when you wake up, you only have a certain amount of time, energy, and focus to dedicate towards certain things. And for me, I'm always looking at, right, well, how can I best dedicate my time and energy towards things that are meaningful to me? Because that's what I want to work on. And eventually, I'd like to be able to effectively, for example, make a more consistent income with what I'm doing. So again, I realized that look, my time and energy is so important. And if I'm spending an hour, hour and a half, even more in the morning or, in random parts of the day, checking my phone to look at content or whatever it might be, then I know that's not going to be great. So even having some level of I guess, some level of restriction or just blocker is, for me at least, has helped. And even if it's something as minimal as putting a blocker to say, I can only spend this amount of time on this a day, or usually for me, it's more so going to be, at least in my case, blocking something just for the morning, right? Sometimes I'll do it a bit longer than the morning, but again, I think you don't like, there's no point going too crazy with it and saying, right, I'm going to never do these anymore. I think it's more so going blocking parts in the day so that you can go, right, I'm just going to, dedicate my time to this. So that's pretty much what I've been doing with sort of app and website blockers. It's not really something I see get talked about a lot. And so I'm not really sure what other people are doing with it. But let me know what you're doing with it because, again, I think that it can be pretty valid and it can help. It's not foolproof. And honestly speaking, sometimes, I have sort of gotten rid of like a few blockers every now and then, on my more struggling and worse days. But I'd say for the most part, it has definitely helped, because it just means, because again, right, we all have those stupid thoughts of, oh, what if I just went and did this thing for a little bit, right? We have those thoughts, and that does pop up. And I think sometimes those blockers can just act as a little, in your face sort of, yeah, that's not happening, unless you really want to go the extra mile to get rid of this thing and to reinstall it later or whatever it might be. So that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Keep working hard. I'll chat soon.